Hi, friends. You are listening to the EntreEd Talk podcast, where we feature amazing educators and entrepreneurs showcasing how you can bring entrepreneurship into the classroom. We believe entrepreneurship is for everyone. I am your host, Toy Hirschman, and I am so glad you chose to join me on this journey. Let's go. All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another fun-filled episode of the EntreEd Talk podcast. We are here today with Beth Kerly. Beth is a full-time tenured business professor at Hillsborough Community College, or HCC. You'll probably hear me say HCC a bunch. And she's also adjunct faculty at the University of Tampa. In addition to her teaching activities, Beth serves as a co-founder of the HCC, see there it is, Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program and Operations Startup. She actively works in promoting and building community and business relationships for HCC, Hillsborough, and its students. Before joining Hillsborough, Beth founded BK Consulting, a business and marketing advisory service company. Internally at Hillsborough, Beth was part of an entrepreneurial venture, international education programming, where she was responsible for marketing. Today, this program generates over $3 million in annual revenue. And Beth also served the Southwest Florida region as Special Assistant to Governor Jeb Bush. And in that role, she was responsible for meeting with constituents, discussing state policies and issues with the local community leaders and citizens. She also reported to the governor's office on matters related to local community needs. That is so cool. Beth currently lives in Tampa with her husband and her beautiful daughter, Emma. So Beth, welcome. We are so excited to have you here today.
Oh, thank you, Toy. I'm really excited to be here too.
This is amazing. So before we did, Beth and I are good friends, so you might hear some giggling on this conversation, folks. So just, not sorry. Okay.
See, we're starting it already.
Well, I'm a goofball, but it's nice to have two goofballs in the room at the same time. Well, and not in the same room. So before we dive in, Beth, can you tell the audience a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Oh, wow. And such a long and winding road. I think that was a song at one point, right? So a little bit about my background professionally. I started at an electric company, Delmarva Power and Light. I'm from the Mid-Atlantic region. And I was I worked in marketing there at Delmarva Power and Light. And they were undergoing what's the word? An expansion. So they were starting a telephone company. And so it was so cool. It's like I got to work at a startup, but within a utility. So that experience just taught me so much about what it takes to start a brand new company and what type of marketing is done when you are changing brands and all of that kind of cool stuff. And what happened to me, as happened to many people, the electric utility itself underwent a downsizing. And my position at that time, unfortunately, was cut. So I was jobless. And I just happened to be finishing my master's in business administration at the same time. And I thought, you know what, maybe I'm just going to change completely. So I went and landed a job with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Delaware as the director of volunteers and of public relations. And I stayed there for a year and I loved it. That's when it bit me, this community give back, just doing the right thing for the right reasons, for the right people, I absolutely adored it. But unfortunately, I just couldn't take the weather in the Northeast anymore. And my husband and I just one day said, let's move to Florida. I mean, literally, my daughter wasn't born at the time. It was just the two of us. Like, let's just move to Florida. And we did. We landed in Florida. And that's when I thought, you know what, maybe I want to teach. So I went to an open house for adjunct faculty and I landed a job at HCC teaching and I absolutely adored it. Remember I said this was a long and winding road, Toy? Well, boy, did it wind. It really took a wind. So I'm teaching at HCC and I find out that the International Education Office was trying to put together some study abroad programs, and they really needed some help with the marketing collateral and kind of the strategy behind how these programs would work. And so I took that on, and I started working in that international education office. And so then it twists again. Toy. It's crazy. That office was right next door to the special assistant for the governor. So Governor Bush at the time had special assistants throughout the state of Florida. So there was one, of course, in Tallahassee. There was one in Jacksonville, Orlando, Miami, and Tampa. And they each had a certain number of counties that they oversaw. So the woman who was working in that position was right next to my office. Well, she was promoted, and she had to find someone that could fill her position for the last 2 years of the governor's term. Never thought that this opportunity would come to me. I'm a girl from Delaware, don't know Florida politics worth of nothing, didn't really care. But I thought, that sounds fascinating. And lo and behold, long story short, I landed that position as a special assistant to Governor Bush for the last 2 years of his term, and learned so much in those 2 years. I absolutely loved it. And then I had my daughter, Emma, and after he left office, and then a full-time faculty position happened at HCC, and I came back home. That's how I look at it. I started in Florida at HCC as a part-time adjunct, took all these little weird twists and turns, and then I came home and really feel like I'm doing something meaningful and impactful for students of HCC and my community.
That's awesome. That's not that long and winding road.
It could have been more. I edited a little.
It's winding, but it all kind of makes sense. I mean, I guess in hindsight, because a lot of people have that, like, oh, it was so weird when it was happening. But then when you look back, you're like, what? Yeah. So I just find it really fascinating that you worked for Governor Bush. What do you think? You worked as kind of the community, you were the eyes and ears of the community, and brought all that back to his office. How do you feel like that impacts you now that you went back home to HCC?
I am so happy that I had that experience. I learned so many things that I use in the classroom, and that I can use professionally in the building of our programs, and even the execution of our program. So some of the first things that I learned, Toy, really had to do with the culture of the governor's office. And that culture was one of personal responsibility. And we were empowered by the governor's office to answer questions and really communicate with our constituents on his behalf. So it was so wonderful to work in a culture like that, because let's say, for instance, Toy, you come to me with a problem. Let's say that there was a pothole in your road. Okay. Now, you and I know that that's not a state issue. Definitely doesn't go to the governor's office. That pothole, that's probably your county or your municipality, right? But many constituents don't know that. They're going to go to the top. I'm going to the governor. I'm calling the governor about this pothole. So it's
totally.
Yeah, right. It makes sense. So what would happen is I would get these calls, and I couldn't say, well, that's not the governor's problem. You need to call, so-and-so. No, that was not acceptable in the office. It was, okay, let me get your contact information. I'm going to make a few calls on your behalf, and someone will be in touch with you. So then I am calling into the county or the municipality, whose ever responsibility it is, and finding out the answers, and then calling back to that constituent. And so that personal responsibility is something that I feel to this day, that the buck stops here. I also learned that you're representing not just the governor or the man in the office, you're representing the governor's office. There's a difference between the two. And I think we lose that a lot on, I don't like the governor, don't like the governor, and all this negative stuff about the governor. But you know what? I respect the office that governor holds. And so I, as a public servant, am going to respect that office and do what I need to do for my constituents. So I think that's one of the main things that I have learned in that experience in the governor's office, is creating a culture right here on my own team and with my students or within my class of personal responsibility, being ethical, making good decisions, never passing a buck. Don't pass the buck. And I think you may see this too in people that are listening today. When you go and have a question, let's say at your bank, and then you have to talk to 3 different people to get an answer, that wouldn't have flown in Governor Bush's administration. You talk to one person and that person's going to get your answer and then come back to you with it. And when I was out in the community, I got a lot of great feedback about that. I would speak at Kiwanis clubs or at Rotary clubs, and they would ask questions that were outside of what I know, because I didn't work in the policy department, no PB, that wasn't me. And so I would tell that constituent, you know what? I do not have an answer for you, but I will get you one. And they would tell me straight up, you know what? I respect you because you are a yes, no, I don't know person. And I really respect that. And I just think we need more of that. And so I try to demonstrate it to this day.
That is amazing. So many young people need that too, because I guess you get into some jobs, and I've had, where it's not my jurisdiction. And the fact that, like, in the potholes, a more simplistic kind of example.
Yes. Yeah.
But that person, if that fictitious person probably wouldn't have gotten it fixed had it not been coming from the governor's office down to the whatever I can't say the word.
Municipality. I had a trouble with it there too. That's the other thing I learned working for the governor.
I can say words. Oh, wow. So yeah, that's amazing. And it's wonderful that you bring that into your school. I love that you're able to, I think, as we grow in a career, we're able to bring all of these things with us. And it ends up, you always kind of end up like, oh, well, I couldn't be here if I didn't have those different steps and those different pieces. And I wouldn't be as good of a professor, as good of whatever you do, if I didn't have those other things.
Yes, I think that's the other important point about my story, is that in school, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. And so I changed a lot. From high school, I thought that I wanted to be in accounting. So I went to a business school. Well, I changed my major. I wasn't interested in accounting. I changed to information systems. But my personality did not fit information systems. I'm much too talkative and outgoing and need to be amongst people. So then I switched to marketing. And that's where my home was. Definitely. I really felt that marketing bug. And then even from there, it was public relations. And so all these twists and turns led to that opportunity with the governor's office, because it was when I had to interview with the chief of staff, they didn't need anybody that knew politics. Matter of fact, my lack of experience in politics is what they liked, because the politics is not related to governing. They're 2 different things. And I thought this was so cool. And so they wanted my experience in public relations and even volunteers and marketing. And that's what I was able to give to the governor's office. So, as students today are thinking through what's their career path going to be, everything does link. It really does link where, oh, wow, I never thought that I could work for the government. Yes, I can with my marketing degree. Who'd have thought, that you didn't have to have a political science degree? By the way, most of the staff were much younger than me, and they all had political science degrees. And I will tell you that, remember, I worked in Tampa, not Tallahassee, which is, of course, our capital, right? So Tallahassee would call down to Tampa and they would need a question answered. I would have my question answered in my report up to Tallahassee probably within like an hour or so. And they just thought I was such a rock star. And like, there's this thing called Google. And I just find it out. So I also discovered, and I'm twisting you a little bit here, Toy, but I was exhibiting entrepreneurial competencies at that time and just didn't know it. So the marketing skills, kind of paired together with my problem finding skills and being able to look at situations from a different perspective gave me the capability of preparing briefs for the governor that were really well researched and well done. So really cool background.
Your self-efficacy skills, which is one of my favorite entrepreneurial mindsets.
See, and you can say efficacy.
Well, it's in my dissertation, so I say it and write it a lot.
But not municipality.
Municipality's not in there. But yeah, like just the fact that you were like, yeah, I can take this job. Why not? Of course I can.
Yeah, I was pushed. I exhibited a typical female. I think it's a female thing. I've read about it. So there's some studies that have been done that we do this to ourselves, where I'm not good enough. I don't know enough. I can't do that job. A lot of that self-doubt, self-talk was happening to me. I won't lie. I knew I wanted to go do that job, but I was too chicken to go talk to the woman who was doing the hiring or making the recommendations. And she was a friend of mine. So what it took was a really great boss. That's another thing that just really changed my life. His name was Michael Brennan, and he was the one that I was working for in the International Ed office. And he said to me, Beth, get your Fanny. This is how he talked. Get your Fanny into her office and tell her that you are interested in this position. And it took this external force to get me moving. And I'm glad that he did that, because it gave me the confidence that I needed, that, I kept doing that self-doubt nonsense. Now that I'm older and I look back on it and say, wow, I was so dumb for thinking, what was the worst that was going to happen? And she was going to say no, or that I didn't get the job. It was really silly of me. I was too afraid to fail or, be embarrassed or whatever. And it was keeping me from an opportunity that literally changed the trajectory of my whole career.
Yeah, we do that to ourselves, don't we?
We do. My
mother has always been the one that's like, get your Fanny and go, because he's like, you're doing that thing again.
Yeah, stop that negative talk. And I find my daughter doing it. And so I am interceding in there and saying, don't tell me about what you can't do. Let's talk about what you can do. And again, entrepreneurial competency. And she's so sick of hearing the word entrepreneurship. She's like, stop it, mother.
My son, I don't want to hear any more about entrepreneurship. He butchers the word in a way that. So speaking of entrepreneurship, I'd love to know more about Hillsborough Community College and the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program and Operation Startup and all of the cool things that you guys are doing there, because I love the way that you're doing entrepreneurship, because it's not traditional and more very slowly. Some schools are starting, universities and even in K through 12 are starting to get on board with this idea of the more experiential learning and things. But I'm going to let you talk about what and how you do things.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll try to not go into too much detail about how it all began and try to give you the highlights. But I think it is important for me to tell you how it began. And this is for, I hope this story helps other schools, whether they be high schools or colleges, universities. From the beginning, we, meaning Dr. Andy Gold and myself, we are partners in the development of all things entrepreneurship at Hillsborough Community College. Without him, probably wouldn't happen. Without me, it probably wouldn't happen. This was a collaboration that was just meant to be, to do some amazing stuff. So from the very beginning, he and I felt that in order to develop something that is meaningful to our community and to our students, we needed to build it as if it was a startup. This was not heard of in education, Toy. I couldn't find any place that actually built something around the students' needs. So community colleges are great at having advisory boards and having their faculty and building programming for the needs of the employers. But entrepreneurship is different, because entrepreneurship, if you're building a program around that, is it the need of the employer? Now, today, yes, it is, because those entrepreneurial competencies are a 21st century work skill. No doubt about it. But remember, we were doing this 7, 8 years ago, before all this was hot. Okay. Entrepreneurship was just starting to simmer at that time. Shark Tank had started, everybody was starting to kind of get excited about this whole entrepreneurship thing. So we built the program like a startup. So here's some of the key points on that. Number one, we started with what we had, which was a certificate in entrepreneurship. It was, I think it was called Entrepreneurship and Business Development or something along those lines. That certificate, Toy, this was funny, and some colleges that are listening to this may know exactly what I'm talking about. It was made up of a principles of marketing class, a principles of accounting class, principles of management class. Like it was just taking all the business administration classes, squishing them together and calling it entrepreneurship. And so when Andy and I started looking at this, we're like, whoa, I something's got to give here. There's a reason this thing is dying on the vine. But it was something that we already had that we could look at and start molding something new. So we thought, all right, well, we need to know some information. So the second thing that we did after looking at the first certificate and seeing that it was dying, we did that research to see what enrollment was. It was very, very down, and it should have been ticking up because entrepreneurship nationally was starting to tick up, and locally. We saw articles in our local newspapers and local publications about entrepreneurship in the Tampa Bay area. And so that was number one. And then number two, which really differentiated us, is we did a survey to 45,000 students of Hillsborough Community College. Wow. And we asked everything about the format that they would want an entrepreneurship degree to be in, like, virtual or in person. We asked questions about the length of it. How long would this thing be? A whole bunch of other questions as well. And that helped us design our first certificate, which was a 12-credit certificate in entrepreneurship. And then, of course, we had to use our expertise and the industry expertise as to what specific coursework needed to be within that degree. So I think those two things, the way to start, are really, really important. By the way, I got to plug it. That's actually in that whole case study is in the Community Colleges as Incubators of Innovation book that NACI has. So chapter 2 talks about the building of the program and really explains how HCC was able to do this. Now, that 12-credit degree has now grown, by the way. We have an actual AS in entrepreneurship. It's not an AS in business administration with entrepreneurship. It's an AS in entrepreneurship. I'm so proud of Florida and the state frameworks having that degree now, and HCC just got it. We're launching that specific degree in the fall of 2021. So we're really, really jazzed about that. So that's how it was built. Now, the question you asked me, Toy, was about how we do it, the experiential pieces of it. So I'll touch on that if you want me to.
Yeah, please. Because you already, as you said, you set it up like a startup. So
yeah. So then you can't build it and just think they're going to come. That's not going to work. So what we did about a semester before the launch of the first certificate program, we started doing events. So we started doing these entrepreneur meetup types of things. So we had We had a Veterans Entrepreneurship Training Symposium. And so that was open to the entire community. We also reached out, I think we had about 2,500 veterans in our student population. So we were starting to leverage that. Remember, with a startup, you use what you have. So that's what we were doing, treating it like a startup. And so that was one event that we did. We started doing a speaker series where we were bringing in guests from the community to talk about business ownerships, like entrepreneurs from the community. Entrepreneurs love to talk about themselves. All right. You give them a room and put some students in it. They're going to be there and they're going to talk about their journey. And it was so successful because the community was loving it. Students were loving it. And we were drumming up the demand for the program so that when we launched the following fall, we had filled our cohort. We had 20 students enrolled. So if you just start something, just willy-nilly, we're going to start this program, maybe you get 5 to 10 students enrolled, but we treated it like a startup. Like we used the marketing skills and have these events and have really good content and a website, like things that would help a student decide that they wanted to go down this path with this 12 credit certificate. The way that we teach is very different. And matter of fact, I just came off of another call with a bunch of students and explained this to them. This is so fun. I get to say it again. The entrepreneurship program is not for the faint of heart. It's not for someone who's like, oh, entrepreneurship, that sounds fun. And that's going to be easy. We know that owning and operating a business is a lot of work. And that it never stops. You can't ever turn it off. It's not like you get off at 5 o'clock and say, I'm done for the day. I'm out of here. It's constant. So what we try to do is introduce students to the relentlessness of entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurial journey. So we have students talk, not send a survey to, physically talk one-on-one with 100 customers within 6 weeks. So they have to be out validating their hypotheses about each element of their business model in person with real people. And the stories are hilarious. The stories of these students, this is one of my favorites. We had a student who has an organic laundry detergent, and she's really, really shy. And she had to go validate this idea. And so Andy, Dr. Gold, says to her, okay, well, why don't you go to a Whole Foods and stand in the laundry detergent aisle and strike up a conversation? And she says, well, how am I supposed to strike up a conversation with a stranger? And he says, I don't know, bump your card into her or into somebody, just bump your cart and that'll start a conversation. Toy, she did. She bumped her cart with somebody and this person went off on her. They were so mad. They were like, like really, really angry. And bless her little heart, she was scared to death. Oh, no. But what came out of it, she just started talking to this person where she bumped carts. And she ended up getting the best information out of this customer. Evidently, the customer was just having a really bad day. And when they found out, the whole story behind this, they thought it was hilarious and they really were very giving. And so she shared that story with the rest of the class about, something bad that happens during anything in your life can really turn out good. It's your state of mind and that entrepreneurial mindset in play there. They would never be able to experience the entrepreneurial mindset if they don't get out of the classroom, if they don't get out from behind their computer and interact with real people in real time and design solutions from the customer's perspective. That's the way we teach. It is all about getting out and getting uncomfortable. I got to give you another quick example. We do this great exercise called Rejection Therapy. And so Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I hope I'm giving some good nuggets for this podcast. So rejection therapy is we have students write down 10 questions that they know they would get a no for. Like if you were to ask that question, you know it's going to be a no. So it's something like, can I drive your car? Yeah. And you're going to say, well, no, or can I give you a kiss? No. All right. So that's the idea. They have to write down 10 questions that they know they're going to get a no for. And they go out in pairs and they have to ask those questions of real people. And they do it on campus and they video record the experiences. So it gets them over the anxiety of getting a no or asking a question. And then the secondary thing that comes out of it is they find out how many yeses they get. They think it's a no, but going through the experience, they actually get a yes for something that they truly thought they wouldn't. And it's just a great, great, great exercise. And there's a video on this too called Rejection Therapy. I forget the young man who did it. It was on YouTube. But if you do a Google search on rejection therapy, that's how you can set it up. And he was getting yeses. It's really funny. So that's kind of how we set up the lesson. So those are two examples of what we do to have that experiential learning. Not necessarily case studies. They're building their own case. They're building a case for their business. And it's being framed out within a business model. So exciting. I love what I do.
I love that so much. That's right up our alley at EntreEd, and so my alley too.
Good.
My favorite thing to say is you can't learn how to swim in the library.
Yes, it's so true. It's so true.
It's funny. I did an exercise, not with 100 customers, but with like 10 at a workshop that was a 3-day thing. And so I had this great idea. It's my idea for my lotion pump bottle thing. And I just thought that everybody in the world has this problem, because when I talk to people, they always have this problem. Turns out everybody does have this problem. Well, mostly women, but nobody cared. And it was kind of shocking to me. They had the problem. They really weren't interested in solving it. It wasn't like, I thought it was like an earth-shattering ordeal, but no, nobody else did.
But yeah, and that's what you have to discover with customer discovery is there a pain point? Are they going to engage with exchanging something of value for solving that pain?
Yeah. And that's really enlightening. And this was a while back when I did that. So it was like really enlightening. And I've taken that into a lot of my trainings with students too, because, I did consulting. So it's a little bit of a different thing, because people would come to me with their pain.
Right. But you could keep the discovery up, because there probably is enough people that share that same pain point. You haven't found them yet. Yeah. And that's what's difficult in this process is how do you know? And so that's why we use 100. That's why we use 100, because you may talk to someone who doesn't have the pain, but maybe their mother does. And then you go talk to the mother and they're like, oh my gosh, yes, this is a pain for all of my friends. And so now you found your new market. Like you thought your market may look like you, but they end up looking like, I don't know, a 75-year-old woman who is having problems with getting the lotion out of the bottle or something along those lines.
Yeah, that's really great. It also, we learn too, with that many hits, that what you started with, I bet a lot of your students, what they started with ends up being something completely different when they go through that interview process.
Oh my word. Yes. Yes. It happens all the time. It's a couple different things. It can either be they can persist with their current idea because it's been validated, or maybe they do need to pivot. I'm sure people have heard that word. It's overused, but they're having to switch around what their original idea was because of what they found through the customer discovery. Or they realize I don't need half of the stuff that that I have in this. So the customers are saying, no, I don't want this feature or that feature. I just want this. And that's what we try to get them to go, validate as a minimum viable product, start with the basics and just see if the customer is going to bite on that. It gets overwhelming. I'm not going to lie. It's tough on them because they get so much feedback. What am I supposed to do with all of it? And so that's why we use the business model, because each of those markets you can track with people that don't know it, look it up, but with all the little sticky notes, this is the market segment that I talk to, and you're changing around the value proposition and just constantly validating. It's a great process.
That's amazing. I want to take the class.
Come on in. Yeah, man.
It does sound like fun, but I know it would be work. So
it is. See, that's the beauty of it, because the students who find it fun and are doing the work, they're exhibiting those entrepreneurial competencies naturally. Then you've got the ones that they're driven and they hate the work, but when they get through it, they love it. So, and then that's still showing it. And then we get the ones that are like, nope, this stuff is not for me. But we still have a well-developed student, Toy, because now they have those competencies, those skills that they can use in their workplaces. And so we're preparing them for future jobs. So it's just winning all over the place for us, because that active learning on skills that you may be innate, but we pull them out, like that whole rejection therapy thing. Like, nobody likes being told no. It made you feel bad when you were 2 years old, when your parent was like, no. And so how do we fix that? How do we develop that? In that rejection is not a bad thing. It's persistence, teaching that persistence. And that gets you to where you ultimately want to be, no matter what it is in your life you're going after.
Yeah, that is so true. We have, we always say at EntreEd too, that it's equally as important to understand that you don't want to start your own business as it is, but go through the process and build those entrepreneurial mindsets, because those are going to help you no matter what you do. And I think that's more important probably now than any time ever, because what these kids are going to do, even ones that are starting college right now, we don't even know what the names of those things are going to be.
I know. It's so true. And I'm so glad that you mentioned something just a second ago, because I think that more funding sources, our governments, private funders, the SBA, I think it's just as important to track how many businesses are not started through programs like ours, because we're saving the economy so much money by keeping a business from starting that shouldn't be, and it fails. And it's not tracked well enough. We're starting to do that ourselves, where you look at the students who have come through and those that decided not to start their business, at least not at that time. And so we're saving the economy in the future. It's a really important statistic.
That's incredible. It's also really important on a personal level, because you are giving the students this knowledge of, like, maybe this isn't the right time, maybe they find out, I really need to go learn more about this to be able to build that business. And those kind of things that are saving them from crashing and burning with an experience that they might have, ultimately done. So it's amazing to me. And I'd like to kind of shift into, it's not really a shift though, but talk about entrepreneur mindsets a little bit. And the idea that, like, so when I'm in sort of our microcosm that's becoming bigger and bigger all the time, which is amazing. Entrepreneurial mindset is like a term that we just all kind of agree that we know what this is. But when I try to explain it to someone who does not identify as an entrepreneur, like, for instance, a lot of times a group of high school English teachers or third grade teachers, or, it's very difficult to describe what the heck is an entrepreneurial mindset. And even in higher ed, with my dissertation, it was very challenging. I was so thankful to have entrepreneurship educator on my committee, because I had a really hard time articulating, like, what is this thing? Like, we all think it's valuable, but what does it mean? So I'd love to hear your
My take on it.
on what the heck is that thing?
Yeah, I know. Mindset. I think for educators, I think they know it as a different term. It's growth mindset, but I think it's growth mindset plus. I hope you're agreeing with me. I hope you're nodding your head yes with me when I put that little plus by it, So an entrepreneur mindset for me, the majority of that, in my opinion, is the ability to be able to take action, immediate action. This is what differentiates an entrepreneur from a non-entrepreneur, or someone with an entrepreneurial mindset from one without. So when I say take immediate action, I mean that when you identify a problem, before you even try to solve the problem, you're already able to determine a way with what you have, right there in your hand, a way to be able to address it. Maybe it's not even a problem. Maybe it's an opportunity, kind of what Andy and I saw. There was this opportunity with entrepreneurship. And so how do we build something? And I talked about it earlier on about, okay, let's start with what we have. Now, I do subscribe to the effectuation model of mindset. And Sarah Saraswati, hero of mine. And the first principle is means. You start with your means. And so she says that what do you know? What do you have? Who do you know? And what is there about yourself? And taking these things and putting them all in action together helps you move forward. So this was a very long, I know you're talking mindset and I'm kind of sitting on one thing, but to me, that's kind of the plus of the growth mindset pieces. So self-efficacy, no doubt about it. Being able to manage risk, no doubt about it. Some of these things are qualities that are used both in the non-entrepreneurship world and just in your workforce as well as in entrepreneurship. I think if we hop back one more time to my discussion about working in the governor's office, I was able to take action based on what I knew, who I knew, what I had around me. And that's what kind of made me shine. And I wasn't an entrepreneur at that time, but I was exhibiting an entrepreneurial mindset. How'd I do? You're the one that wrote a dissertation on this.
It's not quite on entrepreneurial mindset, but I'm still writing it. I probably will never stop writing it ever. It's like the never ending story.
Yeah. I think the other one, Toy, I've got to say this too, because I don't think that there's enough of this out there. There's another quality in entrepreneurial mindset that I think is ridiculously important. And that is accepting failure. Entrepreneurs are great at it. The failure to them is just like, all right, on to the next thing. Give me something new. Let's move on. And I think that companies don't reward failure enough. I think even in our school systems, we don't reward the trying enough. Of course, I'm not going to say failure because I'm an educator too, and if you don't do the work, you fail. So what I'm trying to get at is, if students are showing me this initiative and they're giving it a go, and they're doing their best and they're busting it, then but it didn't work. Whatever it was didn't work the way that it was approached, or whatever. Then not have that negative connotation for that failure. It's celebrating the what was done and the trying, and entrepreneurs are great at doing that. They fail all the time. You've got to fail before you can succeed. And I think, this may be a way that one day, if we ever reimagine education, something that can be built into it is, all right, what are these touch points where you can fail in a safe space before you need to show that end competency? Because I think that's important. We have to be able to measure success and competencies in some way, but there may be a different path of getting to that end. So I would say taking action and embracing failure are my two biggies for entrepreneurial mindset, both for entrepreneurs, those wanting to start their own ventures, and for students or people that work in the business world or in government or in education right now. That mindset's going to help them go much further in what goals they want to achieve.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's kind of like all the other things that are considered mindsets kind of fall under like perseverance and communication, and all of those things kind of fall under those two biggies. I agree with that. So this is a perfect segue. So you also co-authored a book. It's called Impact Ed: How Community College Entrepreneurship Creates Equity and Prosperity. And you wrote it with yours and our friends, Rebecca Corbin and Andy Gold. So that is really amazing. And in the book, there's a part that talks about the idea that you just mentioned, which was the more recognition for trying.
Yeah.
And, whether you call it trying or you call it, failing or falling flat on your face and getting back, whatever that trying happens to be for you, this idea of more companies even and schools need to start recognizing this effort more and giving students and employees, whatever it happens to be, more opportunities to show that. And I think the example was from
Google. Was it Amazon or Google?
I think it was Amazon, but did Jeff Bezos? Yeah, he's the Amazon. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
But the idea that they recognize that in their company, and so more that makes everyone else more willing to put themselves out there too. And it works, I would imagine, and have seen it happen, work all across the board in schools, K through 12 and higher ed as well, where schools that have more of that, the experiential learning, the idea that, this might not work, but you're going to go through this process and you're going to learn more probably from your failure than if it worked and you were successful the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I know we talk, I've talked a lot about it with teachers, explaining, like, even in a STEM classroom, you can still have a traditional STEM classroom or design thinking classroom where the teacher says, oh, we're going to do this great thing today. We're going to build this, robot that does these functions. And then they show them the robot. So then you're going to get 30 robots that look.
Yes. Oh, it's my pet peeve. It's my pet peeve.
You say, how might we do X, Y, and Z? And then here's some stuff you can use. And then, it's a big difference in the learning involved in that undefined outcome situation is so much greater than, my robot doesn't look like that kid's robot. What do I need to do? So that's a really cool principle, and just the idea of letting students, letting people go through that experience. And
it's where innovation stems from. If you're just being shown what you're building or being told what is needed or wanted, then innovation isn't going to necessarily occur, or at least it's going to take a slower time in evolving. So yes, it's absolutely critical that we have that place and space for innovation to occur. And that's a culture within organizations that embraces failure. That's the easiest way for me to say it. I know it's just so counterintuitive. What do you mean embrace failure? I mentioned the Google example. So There's another one, and I'm 99% sure that it's Google, where they actually have employees come up with a project that they know is going to fail, that there's no way on God's green earth that it's going to work. It's kind of like my rejection therapy kind of thing. And Google gives those employees a period of time, and they're getting paid for it and everything. Like they're to go all in trying to solve whatever this problem is. And they know that there's no way it's going to happen. And at the end of this program, there's this big celebration about how this team didn't finish or wasn't able to do what they set out to do. And, they clap and have balloons, and like, there's this whole big celebration of the failure. But what they see on the other side is that they now have the runway, the start of something for a missing piece that may happen in the future. And how cool is that? So that's just one way that a company is addressing this innovative culture, and using the acceptance of failure as a way to be able to stimulate that innovation. I think it's super cool, and I'd love to do it in education. Just haven't gotten to that yet, but us, we'll probably have our own celebration of failure in the next year.
Idea. It's just, especially in education, making students more comfortable with just that concept. We always talk about going younger, because the more exposure you have to that, the trying and the failing, and you become desensitized to it, where you're like, I'm not afraid to try. I have the confidence to be the creative confidence, I think was the term in the book. This idea.
Yes.
I wasn't the artist in school. I didn't get that creative label, but I know I'm creative in other ways because I've had these experiences. And with entrepreneurship can be scary. But if you have that, with like your program and with other programs, even lower in the secondary level, once you've gone through it a few times, you start building this confidence. Like I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so your intentions might be, whether I'm going to be an entrepreneur or not, I'm going to carry those skills and those things with me. And I like to use the analogy of two people that, are going to go skiing for the first time, and they have this, the mindsets are so different. Somebody's like, I'm just going to go, and I don't really want to do this, and I don't think I'm going to be able to. And then the other person's like, well, I think I can, and we're going to take a class. The likelihood of the person with that confidence going in, ending up skiing is higher than the other person.
And not breaking their leg. Yeah.
But it's that idea that like, I've had experiences with different things, but it gives me the confidence to know that I can learn something new and I can do something new. And that's, like you said, where innovation comes from. So that's awesome. Well, we're kind of up on our time, but I could talk to you all day. So I'm going to have to bring you back, and maybe we can do you and Andy together, because that would be really fun. That might last like 10 hours.
I was getting ready to say that would be a couple of hours, but we did do a podcast together, and we behaved ourselves. We, the moderator was fantastic. She gave us a list of questions each, so we knew what we were talking about. She was great.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want that. I think I want the chaos.
Okay, we can bring chaos. That's definitely something that chaos we can bring.
Fun. I love it. I love it. And Andy, for our audience that might not know, Andy was on a early episode. So please go check out Andy Gold's. It was fun, and there's a whole story about John Travolta, which is really awesome.
Andy, he's so funny. and we touched today on the building of a program, and I think that just the partnership and the differences between Andy and myself are really what makes it work. We describe Andy as kind of that shotgun, like just ideas everywhere and everything is crazy and blast it all out, and, stories and so on and so forth. And then I'm kind of the laser pointer, like zip. We're going to zip in on some things, and it works. Our energy works. Students love having the both of us as their as their instructors, because we are so different, but yet very complementary of one another. So look for that. If anybody's building an educational program or a business, find someone that is different than you, but shares the same vision. That's what makes it successful. And I think you can look at any entrepreneur duo in history, and they will tell you that there's a yin to the yang, and they may hate each other, but they bring out the best in each other. And that's definitely what we have at HCC.
That is awesome. I don't even have to ask you the last question about what advice might you give. You just answered it.
I did. That was good. I saved time.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really important. And, and a lot of times that's another thing that students need to understand, is that you don't always have to go solo, and you're probably better off if you don't, and you find someone that has the ththings that you don't have.
I'm sorry. There's been so many times where either Andy's really down. It could just be the environment. There's all the negativity and all the nonsense that goes on in higher ed. And I pull him out of it. And then there's times where it's the opposite, where I'm just frustrated and disgusted, and he pulls me out of it. So yes, you definitely need someone else on your team. That's part of that effectuation stuff I was talking about too. This crazy quilt of people that help you achieve your ultimate goal, no matter what that is.
Wonderful. Oh, Beth, this has been so much fun. So tell everyone how they can find out more about you and Hillsborough and everything that you guys are doing down there.
Absolutely. So to find me, I'm pretty easy to find on social media with Twitter. So my Twitter handle is @mkerly. My name is Mary Beth. It confuses people, but it's @mkerly. And then information about the Hillsborough Community College program, which includes the InLab. Operation Startup has grown, and it is now the InLab. And that's at hccfl.edu/InLab. And that site will give you the depth of services that we have built here over the past 7 years. And the InLab is now our center for interdisciplinary innovation. So we've grown. So yes, Toy, we absolutely need a second visit from me to tell you about how the InLab has grown into this really cool center where students come and ideate, and we're a design thinking center of practice, all this really cool stuff that we do. So definitely go there too. So those are 2 ways to find us.
Awesome. Well, everybody go, please check that out. And this has been wonderful. So thank you so much again, Beth. And fun fact, I don't know if you know this, my middle name is also Beth. And
Fun fact,
I'm Toy Beth, which is so cute.
2 really short names. I mean, I always did love that I had a really short name. Mary Beth Dean. My main name was Dean. Mary Beth Kerly.
Oh, well, this has been wonderful, and I really appreciate you being on here. And I know that our audience is going to love this episode. It's always nice when I don't talk, because the guest is so effervescent and wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
I love it. So thank you so much for being on, and we will look forward to part 2, where we talk all about the InLab and everything else that you guys have going on.
With Andy.
I'm excited and frightened. It's good. Awesome. Thank you, Beth, so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You as well.
Thanks.